Rosa Whitaker had lived in her Knoxville home for more than 3 decades, long enough to remember when the maple tree in the front yard was nothing more than a sapling her husband once measured their son against. Now, at 62, she lived there with that same son, Daniel, and his wife, Camille, along with their 10-year-old boy, Tyler. It was still Rosa's house, her name printed cleanly on the deed, her memories in every corner. Yet lately the rooms felt borrowed, as if she were the one intruding. On the morning of Tyler's birthday, she moved through the kitchen with familiar purpose. Buttermilk biscuits cooling on the counter, a pecan pie resting beneath a clean dish towel, a full southern spread, slow-cooked roast, collard greens, cornbread dressing, all made from scratch. No shortcuts, no store-bought trays. Everything she made carried quiet love and the weight of tradition, the same way her mother had cooked for Daniel when he was Tyler's age. Camille breezed through the kitchen wearing a silk robe that said Bride Squad, though she'd been married for 11 years. She barely looked at Rosa's dishes before wrinkling her nose. "Mom, you should have just ordered catering. This is a kid's party, not a church potluck." The words were light, casual, practiced, but dismissive enough to slice clean. Rosa simply nodded. She'd learned long ago that silence was safer than defending herself. Hours later, guests filled the house, mostly Camille's coworkers, cousins, and polished friends from her fitness studio. They carried expensive gift bags, talked loudly about vacations and remodel plans, and drifted right past Rosa as if she were house staff hired for the day. No one asked about the food. No one thanked her. They just filled their plates and moved on. Tyler, bright-eyed and thoughtful, hugged her the moment he saw her. She handed him a neatly wrapped stack of astronomy books. His face glowed, his excitement pure in a way only 10-year-olds could manage. "These are awesome, Grandma. I've wanted this series forever." In that moment, Rosa felt seen. When the time came for gifts, everyone gathered in the living room. Rosa stood near the back, content to watch. A pile of sleek packages towered around Tyler, tablets, drones, a designer jacket he'd outgrow in 3 months. Then Daniel, wearing a proud, performative smile, stepped beside his son. "Before Tyler opens the rest, I have something special for Mom," he announced. The room quieted with expectation. Even Rosa looked up. Daniel handed her a small gift bag, one clearly purchased from the discount bin at the drugstore. Inside lay a thin synthetic scarf, printed with fading pastel flowers. The fabric scratched her fingertips. Daniel laughed lightly. "Thought you might use this to cover your old face in the pictures today. Lighting's harsh, Mom." The sentence landed like a stone dropped into a still pond, ripples of laughter spreading instantly. Camille smirked behind her wine glass. A couple of guests exchanged amused glances. Tyler's smile faltered, confused, his eyes darting to his grandmother as if trying to understand why his father would say something so cruel. Rosa didn't move, didn't flinch. She only held the scarf, feeling its cheap texture, the weight of her son's words, the years of small humiliations that now condensed into a single, sharp point. And something inside her, something that had bent, stretched, and endured for decades, finally broke. Not loudly, not visibly, but permanently. Rosa remained where she stood, holding the cheap scarf as the laughter in the room gradually resumed its steady rhythm. Conversations restarted. Glasses clinked, Camille's friends compared jewelry and handbags, and Daniel moved on as if his remark had been nothing more than a harmless joke. But Rosa wasn't listening anymore. She stood in the center of her own living room and felt a clarity colder than winter air settling into her bones. For years, decades, she had given without hesitation. She had paid the mortgage when Daniel lost his first job. She had sold her small condo downtown to help him start Whitaker Hauling LLC. She had quietly covered overdue utility bills and insurance premiums when Camille insisted on remodeling the kitchen beyond their budget. Every check she signed had been disguised as a temporary loan, though no one ever paid her back. She had done it because she believed in family, because she believed in her son, because she believed her sacrifices still meant something. But looking around now at the guests who didn't see her, at Camille basking in compliments for the food Rosa cooked, at Daniel laughing loudly with his friends as if her humiliation were entertainment, she realized she had only been feeding a bottomless pit. Nothing she gave had ever built gratitude. It had only made her disappear. Her eyes drifted to Tyler. He sat cross-legged on the floor with his new astronomy books, flipping through the pages with a focus rare for a child at his own birthday party. His innocence softened her chest for a moment. But beneath that tenderness was fear, not for herself, but for him. What kind of man would he become if this house, these values, this environment shaped him? A boy who saw his grandmother mocked and dismissed without consequence? A boy taught that love was leverage and kindness a weakness? A quiet dread pressed against her heart, but it was followed quickly by resolve. As Daniel began urging Tyler to unwrap the next gift, Rosa stepped forward. Her movements were deliberate, unhurried. Camille noticed first, her smile tightening with unease. Daniel looked over his shoulder, slightly annoyed. Rosa's voice, when it came, was soft, so soft that the room, already buzzing with chatter, didn't immediately notice, but something in her tone carried a weight that demanded attention. Within seconds, the laughter died and every eye turned toward her. "I'd like to say something," she began. Daniel stiffened. Camille blinked rapidly, sensing that something had slipped beyond her control. Rosa did not thank the guests or apologize for interrupting. She didn't raise her voice. She simply stated with calm finality, "As of this morning, I have begun the process of transferring this house and the land it sits on into an irrevocable trust. It will belong solely to Tyler when he reaches adulthood." Silence spread like a crack through glass. Camille's wine glass paused midair. Daniel's expression collapsed into confusion, then fear. He opened his mouth as if to object, but no sound came. Around them, guests stared, unsure whether to step back or pretend they hadn't heard. Rosa stood steady, hands folded gently in front of her. "This home will be preserved for him," she said, "and protected." Her voice didn't tremble. Her decision didn't waver. And for the first time in years, the balance of power in the room shifted, quietly but unmistakably. The house was quiet the next morning, a kind of stillness that felt staged, as if every room were holding its breath. Rosa rose before sunrise, the way she always did, and moved through the kitchen with a calm that didn't quite belong to the aftermath of the night before. She brewed a small pot of coffee, set out a single mug, and sat at the table where morning light slanted across the wood like a clean, measured line. She had just taken her first sip when she heard footsteps, Daniel's slower than usual, followed by Camille's clipped, hurried ones. They appeared in the doorway wearing identical expressions of forced concern. "Mom," Daniel began, easing into the chair across from her, "about last night? Let's not make a big deal out of it. You were just overly emotional." His tone suggested a parent correcting a child. Camille folded her arms, adding, "An irrevocable trust? For the house? That's a huge decision, Rosa. People don't just do that. It's irrational. You should have talked to us first." Rosa didn't lift her eyes from her cup. She stirred the coffee once, calmly, as if their words were distant radio static rather than accusations dressed up as care. Daniel leaned forward. "Look, we get it. Birthdays are stressful, and you've had a lot on your mind. But let's be reasonable. This trust idea, it's not really you talking. You're tired. You're overwhelmed." Camille's voice softened artificially. "We're worried about you. You've seemed confused lately." There it was, the nudge toward fragility, toward incompetence, toward rewriting her clarity as instability, a familiar strategy. Rosa took another slow sip of coffee, letting its warmth steady her. She offered no argument, no reassurance, no explanation. Her silence made Daniel shift in his chair. Camille, irritated by the lack of reaction, grabbed her purse. Fine, I'll handle things myself. We still need to put a deposit down on the SUV. She said it loudly, as if the words were meant to provoke guilt. She pulled out her shiny red wallet, swiped the business debit card through the reader on her phone, and waited. A pause, then a sharp electronic buzz. Declined. Camille frowned. Tried again. Another decline. She blinked at the screen, confused, frustration creeping into her voice. What? That's impossible. This account always has room. Daniel stood, moving behind her to check the screen himself. His jaw tightened. Maybe the bank made a mistake. But the flicker in his eyes said he didn't believe it. Camille hissed under her breath. You don't think she would actually... Daniel cut her off quickly, but Rosa saw the fear forming, thin and bright, like the first crack in glass. Rosa continued sipping her coffee, watching them from the corner of her eye, not with triumph, but with a quiet certainty. The real storm had only just begun, and they both felt the shift even if they refused to acknowledge it. She set her cup down, gently, the soft click echoing in the still kitchen. There was nothing more to say. The unraveling had already started. 2 days later, Rosa walked into the downtown Knoxville office of Attorney Milton Reed with a canvas tote bag neatly packed, the house deed, tax statements, old loan documents, and a folder containing Whitaker Hauling LLC's formation papers. The January air outside was sharp, but she felt clearer than she had in years. Every step up to the brick building felt deliberate, measured. Milton greeted her with a firm handshake. He was in his late 50s, a calm, analytical man with the look of someone who had seen families implode in every way imaginable. Rosa, he said with a nod, let's go through everything slowly. They sat across a polished oak desk, and she began laying out the documents, one by one. He examined them with quiet concentration, occasionally adjusting his glasses or making notes on a yellow legal pad. Rosa watched him closely, her hands folded in her lap, giving no sign of the storm that had pushed her into his office. When he opened the LLC file, he paused. You said you've never taken out any loans under the business, correct? Rosa shook her head. Never. I've given Daniel money, personally, but I've never signed anything for the company. Milton slid a document closer to her. Then you'll want to see this. At the top was a $35,000 business loan agreement dated 8 months earlier. Her name was printed clearly on the borrower line, and beneath it, tilted slightly, traced with uneven pressure, was her signature. Only it wasn't hers. Milton pointed to the transfer summary. The funds were withdrawn within 48 hours. The entire amount was transferred to, he flipped the page, Camille Whitaker's personal account. Rosa's breath didn't hitch. Her shoulders didn't tense. Her face remained still, but something behind her eyes shifted like a door clicking shut. She stared at the forged signature for several seconds, measuring the reality of it, not just the theft, but the entitlement, the certainty Daniel and Camille must have felt in believing she would never find out. Milton studied her expression. Rosa, this is clear financial fraud. Identity theft. Because it's tied to a business, the penalties are serious. We need to take action. She lifted her gaze to him, steady and unshaken. Tell me what needs to be done. Milton outlined the steps. A formal fraud investigation with the bank, notification to the state business registry, immediate revision of the LLC's ownership structure, and documentation proving she had never approved the loan. Rosa listened without interrupting. When he finished, she nodded once. Do all of it. Milton hesitated, then asked, And the trust for your grandson? Are you still moving forward with the irrevocable structure? Rosa reached into her tote and withdrew Tyler's birth certificate and the draft trust documents she had begun, reviewing earlier that week. She placed them on the desk. Yes, proceed exactly as planned. The house is for him, no one else. There was no tremor in her voice, only precision. The same controlled certainty she had felt the moment Daniel humiliated her with the scarf. Milton sat back, almost impressed. I'll begin the filings today. Rosa thanked him, gathered her papers, and rose from her chair. As she stepped out into the cold air again, she felt none of the heaviness she expected. Betrayal, yes, but not defeat. Her mind was clear. Her path was set. For the first time in years, Rosa was acting not out of hope or habit, but out of truth. And she would not turn back. 3 days later, the first cracks in Daniel and Camille's world arrived in the form of 2 heavy envelopes, slid through the mail slot. Camille heard them fall against the hardwood entryway and walked over casually, expecting bills or advertisements. But when she saw the letterheads, one from Attorney Milton Reed, the other from Valley First Bank, her stomach tightened. She tore open the bank envelope first. As her eyes scanned the page, her face drained of color. Temporary. Freeze, she whispered. Due to suspected fraudulent activity, pending investigation, full audit of business accounts. Her hands trembled. She ripped open the second envelope. Milton Reed's letter was even worse. A formal notice that Rosa Whitaker was withdrawing from Whitaker Hauling, LLC, effective immediately, paired with a demand for documentation related to a loan she had allegedly never authorized. Attached was a request for all financial records, signatures, and transfers linked to both Daniel and Camille. Camille's panic sharpened. No, no, this can't be happening, she muttered, pacing. She wouldn't. She couldn't, but she knew Rosa could. And she had. The front door opened. Daniel walked in, tossing his keys onto the console table with the bored fatigue of a man expecting nothing out of the ordinary. Camille thrust the letters at him. Read. Just read. Daniel sighed, irritated, but took the pages. As he scanned the first letter, a frown formed. By the second page, his brows were knit in confusion. By the time he reached the bank notice, he stopped breathing for a full second. What is this supposed to mean? He demanded, though the shaking in his voice betrayed him. It means we're in trouble. Camille snapped. There's an audit. They froze the account. The bank thinks the loan is fraudulent. They're going to dig through everything, Daniel. Daniel slapped the letters against his thigh. This is ridiculous. Mom must have misunderstood something. She wouldn't. She doesn't do things like this. But his voice lacked conviction. He knew his mother. He had known her softness his entire life. What he didn't yet understand was her certainty once she made a decision. Camille pulled at her hair. What are we supposed to do? The SUV deposit bounced, remember? We can't afford, Daniel cut her off. Stop panicking. I'll talk to her. She's overreacting, that's all. But even as he said it, dread crept into his expression. His mother had not overreacted in years. She absorbed things, swallowed them, endured them. For her to act meant something had broken long before he noticed. He stormed out onto the back porch, where Rosa stood in her winter coat, pruning the dormant hydrangeas with slow, steady motions. She didn't look up when he approached. The garden she tended was peaceful, almost indifferent to the chaos unraveling inside the house. Mom. Daniel barked. What is going on with these letters? Why would you do something like this? Rosa clipped a pale stem, set it aside, and finally lifted her eyes to him. Calm, clear, unhurried. What you're receiving, she said softly, is only the beginning of what you created. Then she turned back to her garden, leaving Daniel standing in the cold, holding the letters that marked the first wave of collapse. Rosa was folding a stack of fresh towels when the footsteps thundered down the hallway. Heavy, hurried, vibrating with fury. The door to her bedroom flew open without a knock. Daniel and Camille stormed in, their anger spilling into the quiet space like a flash flood. What are you doing to us?" Daniel shouted, his voice cracking with a desperation he tried to hide. "Why would you file things with a lawyer without talking to me first?" Camille clutched the bank letter dramatically to her chest. "Do you have any idea what you've put us through? I haven't slept. I've been sick all morning. They froze the business account, Rosa. Froze it. We can't even make payroll next week. Do you want us to go bankrupt?" Rosa set another towel on the bed, smoothing its edges. She didn't look at them yet. Their chaos did not reach her. She had already lived through her breaking point. Daniel stepped closer, lowering his voice as if aiming for guilt instead of volume. "Mom, we've always taken care of you. We've let you stay here. We've included you. Why would you turn on us like this? Why now?" Camille burst into tears, loud, theatrical. "It feels like betrayal," she wept. "After everything we've done for you, Rosa. After all the love I've shown you." Rosa quietly pulled out her reading glasses and placed them on her nose. Daniel's voice sharpened. "Just undo whatever you did with the lawyer. Tell the bank it was a misunderstanding. It's that simple." They both waited for her to justify herself, to apologize, to fold the way she always had. Instead, Rosa walked to her dresser, opened the bottom drawer, and took out a manila folder. Her movements were unhurried, almost ceremonial. She placed the folder on the small round table by the window and slid a single sheet toward them. The forged $35,000 loan agreement. Her printed name. Her signature, crooked, clumsy, not hers. The transfer to Camille's personal account. The effect was immediate and devastating. Camille stopped crying mid-breath. Daniel's anger drained into a stunned, chalk-white panic. He reached for the document with trembling fingers, scanning the lines again and again as if reading them fast enough could change what they said. "Mom, this," Daniel swallowed hard. "This must be, there's an explanation." Camille backed away from the table, her voice thin. "Rosa, it wasn't. You're misunderstanding." Rosa finally sat down, folding her hands neatly in her lap. Her voice, when she spoke, was steady and quiet, more cutting than any raised tone could have been. "These are not the actions of people who care for me," she said. "These are the actions of people who expected I would never look." The sentence landed with surgical precision. Daniel's face collapsed, the facade gone. Guilt flickered, then fear. Camille opened her mouth to defend herself, but no words came. The truth sat between them, unmovable. Rosa continued, her tone controlled, almost gentle. "You have spent years assuming I wouldn't see what was taken from me. You were right until now." The room fell into a suffocating silence. For the first time, Daniel and Camille understood that Rosa's calm wasn't weakness. It was judgment, and it was final. By Saturday afternoon, Camille had transformed the dining room into a stage. The long table was set with pastries and sweet tea, the kind of southern spread meant to look welcoming. But beneath the lace runner and polished silver, the air felt wrong, too curated, too pointed. Rosa entered quietly, taking in the faces gathered around the table. Camille's parents, her sister Megan, 2 cousins from Johnson City, people who rarely visited unless invited for holidays. Today they sat with tight, overly warm smiles, each holding a mug as if participating in a polite intervention. Camille gestured to an empty chair. "Rosa, sweetheart, sit. We all just want to talk." Rosa did not sit. She clasped her hands loosely in front of her, reading the room with one slow glance. It was all there, the softness in voices, the nods of concern, the orchestrated sympathy. Kindness sharpened into something predatory. Camille began, her voice heavy with artificial worry. "We're all just really concerned about you. You've been under stress. And sometimes stress makes people confused." Her mother chimed in gently. "It's totally understandable at your age, dear. Anyone might mix up paperwork or misunderstand things. A cousin leaned forward, rehearsed and ready. Daniel told us you've been acting inconsistent, making sudden decisions, feeling overwhelmed. Rosa's expression didn't shift. Camille pressed on, laying the foundation brick by brick. The trust, the lawyer, the accusations. We just don't think these choices reflect your usual self. And we want to protect you from making mistakes you'll regret. Megan added, there are ways we can help. Manage things for you. Handle documents. Even oversee accounts so nothing gets lost or misinterpreted. The word hung in the air without being spoken. Guardianship. Soft voices, gentle hands, light smiles, control wearing the mask of compassion. Daniel, sitting stiffly, wouldn't meet Rosa's eyes. Camille continued, if you could just acknowledge that you were confused about the loan, maybe misunderstood what it was, we can all take a breath and move forward. Rosa let silence settle. She didn't argue. She didn't defend herself. She watched them, calm and unreadable, letting every intention in the room reveal itself. Their confidence swelled in the emptiness of her response. Camille took this as permission to tighten the net. We love you, Rosa. We really do. But we can't let you put yourself, or the family, in danger because of a moment of confusion. If you could just admit you weren't thinking clearly. A knock sounded at the front door. It cut through Camille's sentence like a blade. Before Daniel could rise, the door opened and Aunt Lorraine Becker stepped inside. Rosa's late sister's closest friend, a retired accountant with a spine of steel and a reputation for never arriving anywhere without purpose. She carried a thick brown folder tucked beneath her arm. Her entrance froze the room. Camille's smile faltered. Lorraine, we didn't know you were coming. I'm sure you didn't, Lorraine replied coolly. She walked past Camille's relatives without greeting them and stood beside Rosa, placing the heavy folder on the table with a quiet, decisive thud. The tone of the room shifted instantly, like a trap snapped shut on the wrong prey. Lorraine folded her hands. Before this meeting continues, she said, her voice as sharp as polished glass, there are some documents everyone here needs to see. And just like in the original story, the power in the room tilted unmistakably. Aunt Lorraine opened the folder with the precision of someone who had prepared for this moment down to the breath. Camille's relatives leaned in, their polite concern stiffening into unease. Daniel looked from face to face, sensing the shift, but unable to stop it. Let's start with context, Lorraine said, sliding the first set of documents across the table. These are receipts, bank drafts, and cashier's checks from the past 12 years. Every major expense that Rosa covered for this household and for Whitaker Hauling, LLC. Camille blinked rapidly. That's unnecessary. We all know she helped. Lorraine cut her off. Helped? Rosa paid the down payment on this house. She covered payroll 5 separate times. She paid off Daniel's truck loan twice. And she absorbed all business tax penalties for 3 consecutive years because someone, her eyes flicked to Camille, forgot to file. Camille's mother stiffened. Camille, is that true? Camille opened her mouth, but no sound emerged. Lorraine laid out the second set of papers. These are accounting summaries showing repeated transfers, small enough to avoid immediate suspicion, but large enough to matter. Every transfer came from the business account, and every single one went directly to Camille's personal card. A murmur rippled through Camille's relatives. Megan leaned back, her face draining. One cousin whispered. She said the money was salary advances. Lorraine didn't pause. She placed a printed email chain in the center of the table. This is the GPS-stamped digital receipt, proving Rosa was in Savannah, Georgia, visiting her sister's grave on the exact date the $35,000 loan was allegedly signed. Daniel's jaw dropped. That can't be right. Oh, it's right, Lorraine replied. She made a hotel purchase with her card at 2:14 p.m. The same time the loan office claims she sat in their building signing papers. Camille's mother turned to her daughter slowly. "Camille, what is going on?" Lorraine then lifted the final document, an enlarged copy of the forged signature. "And here," she said with surgical calm, "is the confirmation from a certified handwriting analyst. Rosa did not sign this. Someone intentionally forged her signature." The room erupted, not loud, but sharp, like glass cracking under tension. "You lied to us?" Megan demanded. "Did you use Rosa's name for a loan?" One cousin hissed at Camille. "Is that why the account froze?" Another relative added, disgust dripping from every syllable. Camille looked cornered, her mascara smudging as panic overtook her theatrics. "I didn't, Daniel told me. It was supposed to be. We were going to pay it back." Daniel recoiled. "Don't put this on me. You said it was fine. You said nobody would notice." "Oh, now you care about responsibility." Camille snapped. "You let your mother bankroll your whole life and didn't blink." Their fight spiraled in front of everyone, ugly, unfiltered, exposing every crack they had tried to hide. Camille's mother looked horrified. "This is embarrassing. For all of us," Megan added sharply. "You've put your entire family at risk." Daniel's voice rose, desperate. "Mom, please, tell them this is all a misunderstanding." Rosa stood quietly beside Lorraine. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. "The misunderstanding," she said softly, "is believing I was blind." Camille covered her face. Daniel ran a hand through his hair, shaking, unable to form a defense. The image of their respectable marriage, loyal wife, hard-working husband, thriving small business, collapsed in front of everyone they had invited to control her. Camille's relatives withdrew their support instantly, like a tide pulling back from a shoreline made suddenly dangerous. And Rosa, calm and dignified, watched the truth reshape the room just as the original story demanded. The collapse had begun, and now it was public. The consequences did not arrive dramatically. They arrived in letters and phone calls. In meetings Daniel dreaded but could no longer avoid. Within a week, Attorney Milton Reed explained the situation plainly. If Daniel wished to avoid criminal charges related to the forged loan and misappropriated funds, he would need to agree to a full dissolution of Whitaker Hauling, LLC. Daniel sat slumped in the attorney's office, shoulders rounded as if gravity itself had turned against him. Camille was silent beside him, her face pale beneath layers of makeup. Milton slid the dissolution paperwork across the polished desk. "This is the only way forward," Milton said. "If you cooperate, the bank will focus on recovery rather than prosecution." Daniel nodded, slowly defeated. "Fine, I'll sign." The dismantling happened piece by piece. The business truck was repossessed first, then the trailer, then the two smaller vehicles they had purchased through the company but used for personal errands. The equipment Daniel had once taken pride in, pressure washers, hauling rigs, specialized tools, was sold off at auction for a fraction of their value. Camille's world shrank even faster. Credit cards closed. The boutique gym membership lapsed. Her preferred salon refused to schedule her after 2 bounced payments. Online orders were declined one after another, and the SUV deposit, the one she'd tried to initiate the morning the card was declined, was officially canceled. The dealership sent an email stating they saw no viable financing options. Daniel and Camille moved through their days in a stunned, broken rhythm. Arguments no longer burst out. They simply simmered silently, each blaming the other for the crater their life had become. When the bank formally seized their joint account, they received notice they had 30 days to vacate the house. It was not Rosa's decision. It was the natural consequence of debts compounding over years. They found a small rental on the outskirts of Knoxville, peeling shutters, a sagging porch, a narrow patch of yard too shaded for grass to grow. The wallpaper was stained and faded. The carpet smelled faintly of mildew. Camille cried when she saw it, but there were no alternatives. They signed the lease. Meanwhile, Rosa moved with steady purpose. There was no triumph in her steps, only clarity. She prepared her home for sale, not because she was forced to, but because she chose to restructure her life on her terms. She cleared out closets, boxed memories, repainted the guest room. The house that had carried years of sacrifice now carried something else, finality. When it sold, the proceeds, every cent, were placed into the irrevocable trust for Tyler. Attorney Reed filed the last of the documents with quiet respect. Rosa did not announce her actions to Daniel or Camille. She did not gloat, nor did she explain. She simply ensured the boy she loved would be protected forever from the values that had shaped his parents. And so the power dynamic shifted entirely, not with shouting, not with vindication, but with a silence deeper than any argument. Daniel and Camille packed boxes late into the night, their once orderly home reduced to piles of cheap storage bins. Rosa watched from her kitchen window as their car pulled away for the last time. Her expression held neither anger nor satisfaction, only truth. Life at last had rearranged itself to match what had been real for years. Rosa's new apartment sat 3 blocks from the Charleston shoreline, close enough for the salt in the air to meet her at the balcony each morning. It was smaller than the Knoxville house, but it felt larger in the ways that mattered. Sunlight moved across the hardwood floors in unbroken lines. The quiet was soft, not tense. For the first time in decades, her days belonged wholly to her. She settled into a gentle rhythm, a morning walk beneath the moss-draped oaks, coffee on her small balcony as the ocean breeze threaded through the railing, afternoons spent rearranging books, planting herbs, learning the edges of a life not shaped by anyone else's demands. There were no footsteps pounding down a hallway, no accusations disguised as concern, no weight of someone else's chaos pressing against her skin. Autonomy, she found, didn't feel dramatic or loud. It felt like breathing without effort. One afternoon, as she returned from the farmer's market with a basket of peaches, Rosa found a letter tucked under her door. The handwriting was familiar in its slightly uneven curves. Tyler. She carried the envelope to the balcony before opening it, letting the coastal wind cool her palms. Grandma, the letter began, Dad says we're moving again. I don't really understand why, but things feel different now. I miss your house. I miss how it smelled when you cooked. I miss how you always listened to me even when you were busy. Rosa paused, her thumb brushing the corner of the page. The horizon widened in front of her, blue and steady. Mom says we shouldn't bother you right now, but I wanted to send this anyway. I still read the books you gave me. I'm finishing the one about constellations. I look for Orion every night because you said it would help me find my way if I ever felt lost. Her breath trembled softly, not from sadness, but from the fragile purity of his words. Thank you for the birthday. I didn't say it enough. I liked everything. I liked you being there. I hope I can visit someday. I want to show you the pictures I've been drawing. They're better now. I think you'd be proud. Rosa closed her eyes for a moment, absorbing the hope, the innocence untouched by the choices of the adults around him. I love you, Grandma. You're Tyler. She folded the letter carefully, holding it against her chest as the breeze lifted strands of her hair. The ache she felt wasn't grief, not anymore. It was something gentler, a reminder that even in the midst of collapse, some things remained unbroken. As the afternoon sun dipped lower, she stepped onto the beach path behind her building. The sand was warm beneath her shoes. The tide was pulling in, slow and rhythmic, the way healing often moved. Never rushed, never forced, just steady. Rosa walked until the water brushed over her feet. The ocean stretched endlessly ahead, bright and open, carrying the promise of a second life she had once thought she would never know. She lifted her face to the wind, letting it wash over her. Her past no longer dictated her steps. Her future no longer required sacrifice to the ungrateful. Her present belonged only to her. And as the sun settled behind the waves, Rosa Whitaker stepped fully, quietly, beautifully, into the life that had finally begun.